Blade, patrol, motor grader. This machine has several names, and it's used on just about all highway maintenance and construction jobs. Windrowing, spreading, and mixing material. From rough cuts and snow plowing to delicate finish work. In short, the motor grader is one versatile piece of equipment, and it takes a great deal of skill to operate. This course covers motor grader operation from the operator's point of view. The course is divided into 3 programs. Here in Part 1, I'll cover some basic information about the motor grader and the startup and shutdown procedures. The second program covers blade positions and maneuvering. The third program covers operating techniques in actual work situations. Okay, let's get started. Basic information. A motor grader is designed primarily to level or smooth an area. To do this, it has a long wheelbase, so it can span short depressions or bumps. The blade, or mold board, is carried in the center, so bumps can be cut off and depressions can be filled in. The tandem axles in the back help too. The axles move independently, so there's little up and down effect on the frame of the machine. All graders have this basic design in common: the long wheelbase, the centered blade, and the tandem wheels. But there are about as many different models of graders as there are heavy equipment manufacturers. So you'll find some differences from one model to the next. Of course, we can't cover every model in this program, but here are the most important differences. Starting in the cab, the instruments and controls vary from one motor grader to the next. Some graders have automatic transmissions, while others have standard manual transmissions. Also, some graders have 4-wheel drive, where only the back tandem wheels provide the traction. And other graders have all-wheel or 6-wheel drive. That's where both the back and front wheels provide traction. All graders have rear differentials that provide positive traction. That's where the tandem axles are locked and the wheels on both sides of the grader turn together. But some graders have differentials that can be unlocked to make turning easier. When the differentials are unlocked, the wheels on each side of the grader turn independently of the wheels on the other side. Finally, some graders are articulated. On these graders, the frame pivots on a joint behind the cab. Articulation allows for sharper turns and easier positioning of the grader at the work site. Other graders are non-articulating. They have a rigid frame. So those are the important differences. Each motor grader has its own system of instruments and controls. The grader may have an automatic or standard transmission. It may have 4-wheel or 6-wheel drive. It may have a lock-unlock differential. And the grader may be articulating or non-articulating. Again, we can't cover all the models in this program, so read the operator's manual. Get to know the locations and functions of all the instruments and controls. Learn the capabilities and the limitations of the machine you'll be using. Okay, now startup procedures. As an experienced operator, you know that startup involves much more than turning a key. You have to complete a series of daily checks to make sure the grader's in good shape. The daily checks can be divided into 4 parts: the walk-around inspection, engine checks, lubrication, and the cab inspection. Let's start with a walk-around. It's a general, overall look at the machine. The purpose of the walk-around inspection is to spot obvious problems, leaks, damage, loose or broken parts. If you find something wrong, fix it yourself or let your supervisor know about it. Leaks of oil, coolant, or fuel are certain signs that something's wrong. Investigate and get the problem corrected before you go on. Pay special attention to the rear tandem wheels. Note any wheel lean. That might mean you've got a bad axle bearing. Keep an eye out for deep cuts and excessive or uneven tread wear. Look for loose or broken lug nuts. Make sure everything is tight. Take a look at the mold board and the blade that's attached to the mold board. Blades do wear out, and when they do, they have to be replaced. A worn or cracked blade could damage the mold board. So bring tools with you just in case you have to change blades out in the field. Small cracks like these won't cause any problems now, but you can bet they'll get bigger soon. So keep an eye on them and get the blade changed before there's any damage to the mold board. Make sure you have fluorescent orange flags on the mold board for highway travel. You should also have 2 flags and a slow-moving vehicle emblem mounted on the rear of the grader. It's all part of the equipment. Look for leaks or loose fittings around the hydraulic lines. Hydraulic leaks can be dangerous because the oil is under high pressure, so keep all fittings tight. And that's it for the walk-around. Again, it's a general look at the equipment, taking care of problems that could affect your safety or the operation of the machine. Okay, now engine checks. For the engine to run, it needs oil, coolant, air, and fuel. Those are your main checkpoints. First, oil. Check the engine oil every day. You never know when a diesel's going to start burning oil. And note the condition of the oil. Contaminated oil can ruin the engine. Oil that is discolored, feels gritty, or smells of fuel is a sure sign of a major problem. So take a good look. Next, coolant. Just remove the radiator cap and look inside. The coolant level should cover the entire radiator core. Keep both sides of the radiator grill clear. If the grill gets clogged up, the engine could overheat. Bad fan belts and hoses can cause overheating too. If they're loose, tighten them. If they're worn or cracked, get them replaced. A loose fan might mean the water pump is broken. There shouldn't be any play at all. Now, air. Dirty air is one of the leading causes of diesel engine failure. That makes air filters absolutely critical. Most graders have an air filter restriction indicator. If it's been tripped, it's time to clean or replace the air filter. There are a number of ways to clean an air filter. Check with the operator's manual or talk with your supervisor for the recommended procedure. The easiest way to clean the filter is to tap it lightly on your hand to shake out the dust. Of course, if it's really dirty, you should get a new filter. Don't hit the air filter on a tire or any hard surface. That could damage the gaskets and make the filter just about useless. The pre-cleaner traps most of the dust in the air before it gets to the air filter. Clean it out now and occasionally throughout the day. Diesel engines use a lot of air, and it has to be clean. The fuel you burn has to be clean too. Water and sediment in the fuel cause all kinds of problems that lead to breakdowns. So drain off about a pint of fluid from the fuel tank. That should get rid of any water or sediment that has settled at the bottom of the tank. Okay, one more fluid level to check, the transmission oil. How and when you check the transmission oil will vary from one model to the next. On this grader, you check the level by removing a plug on the tank. You should see a little oil seep out, but never get under there without making sure the parking brake is set and the blade is on the ground. Now let's take a look at lubrication. There'll be a lubrication chart in the operator's manual or on the grader itself. The chart shows the locations of the grease fittings and the recommended service intervals. As part of daily maintenance, you're concerned primarily with greasing the parts that get the most wear. On graders, that includes the moldboard lifts and linkage. Look all over for fittings that look dry. Grease is cheap compared to repair charges. And notice how he wipes the fitting clean before he adds grease. That prevents forcing dirty grease back into the fitting. Now the front end. Grease all steering parts. There are plenty more points to grease. Again, refer to the operator's manual to find where they are and how often they should be serviced. You still have a few more checks to make, but they should be done after you start the grader. Before you start up, make sure the transmission is in neutral and the parking brake is set. Don't crank the starter for more than 30 seconds. That'll wear it out. If the engine doesn't start right away, wait a minute or so before you try again. In cold weather, a shot of ether into the pre-cleaner might help you get started. But never use ether if your grader is equipped with a glow plug starting aid. That could cause an explosion. A few more points about starting. Never attempt to start the grader unless you're sitting in the operator's seat. It could get away from you. And if you're inside a garage or shed, make sure there's plenty of ventilation. Exhaust gases are poisonous. Once you get started, run the engine at idle speed for 5 minutes or so. Now that's important. The engine needs time to warm up so an oil film can develop on the cylinder walls and other internal engine parts. And it gives you time to complete the cab inspection. Check your gauges. Keep them clean so you can see them clearly. And make sure all the gauges are working. They can tell you a lot about the condition of the grader before you leave the yard. Take some time to clean up the cab. Wipe off greasy floorboards and remove any trash that could interfere with the operation of the controls. Make sure you can see clearly through the windshield, side